They warned us that aliens were coming. They didn't warn us about their biologies. Certainly not about what could happen when one of them crashed through a human's door alone. Trembling, desperate, and unmistakably in heat. Even half dozing on his narrow cot in Refuge 7, Dravenholt recognized trouble. He felt it in the subtle shift of air pressure, in the crackle of static as the security locks disengaged without his override, and in the scent-sharp ozone mixed with wild blossoms that flooded the room the instant the pneumatic seal hissed apart. He rolled to a crouch, pulse blade flashing into his palm, adrenaline exploding through veins still conditioned by years on the front. What stepped over the threshold stole his breath faster than any firefight. 8 feet of sculpted obsidian blue. Muscle. Ceremonial armor plates glowing with pale circuitry. Silver eyes dilated to liquid moons. The Scala of the Zalari. The warrior he'd dragged out of a jungle ravine when the war was still painting every sunrise red. Her gaze pinned him. Her flared nostrils drank him in as though scent mattered more than sight. A low, visceral note escaped her throat closer to a purr than a growlland. Every instinct screamed that this was no social call. Authorization? Draven demanded, keeping his voice level even while his heart hammered like a railgun. You know you can't be in human quarters after curfew. The Zalari tongue coiled around basic and strange rhythms. You are male, unbonded, unharmed. I require proximity. She took a step, joints articulating with the liquid grace of a stalking panther. Sparks danced along the biocircuit tattoos etched into her skin. The visual tell of heightened neural activity, their version of blushing. Thess was a fighter first, scientist second, with a voice that usually cracked jokes about Draven's ridiculously soft earth bones. Tonight, however, humor was gone. Every line of her tall frame screamed biological imperative. Zalari females entered Reekthera once per cycle, a neuroendocrine storm that blurred the line between desire and need. Denied release, the mind could shut down, the body could seize. She was on the edge, far from her own people's medical bay. And she'd somehow homed in on the one human whose genetic scent she trusted. Draven lowered the blade an inch knot in surrender, but to avoid provoking a warrior who could fold him like alloy foil. Memories flickered, him hauling her limp form through damp, vine-choked ravines while mortar fire turned midnight into midday. Her armor fused to flesh after a plasma burst, yet still she'd argued tactics as he cauterized bleeding arteries. Alliance bureaucrats loved their treaties, but bonds forged amid shrapnel and screams ran deeper than ink. Still, treaty protocols were explicit. Cross-species intimacy without explicit consent from both parties was a Class 1 violation, punishable by exile from Earth's protectorate zones. Draven's mind raced for Solutions medical sedative. Come linked to Zalari medics. Automated restraint, net accept all of those required leaving the room or powering devices that might trigger her combat reflexes. Outside loomed more than legality. Rogue pirate cells had infiltrated several refuges, preying on any vulnerable alien who ventured alone at night. If Thess wandered back out the door in delirium, she wouldn't make it 2 blocks before someone tried to auction her biotech implants. He holstered the pulse blade but kept the emitter keyed under his thumb. Vess, listen. You saved my squad on Vrax Ridge. Let me return the favor properly. I can get you to the infirmary. She shook her head, midnight braids lashing against bare shoulders where armor had been hastily removed. Too far. Time is lightning inside my skull. She swayed, catching herself on the doorframe, talons scoring deep grooves into composite. A single tremor rippled through her towering figure, and the forged steel aura cracked to reveal terror. Draven's chest tightened. He had witnessed combat panic, nuclear dread, but never this raw biological urgency. The Alliance said humans and Zalari were genetically incompatible. Mating was impossible. Merely a curiosity for xenobiologists. Yet Reekthera didn't care about diplomatic footnotes. It cared about pheromones, immune markers, willpower, and apparently Draven. He exhaled slowly. All right, I'm here. He stepped closer, arms spread to show he carried no threat. The move placed his heartbeat within her reach. Thess inhaled, lips parting, canines glinting. Her chest rose on an almost painful breath, and something eased in her shoulders, predator melting to supplicant. The change was so sudden, it left him dizzy. She pressed a palm to his sternum, claws retracted, the skin hot as fresh plasma glass. Neural filaments under her skin lit up where they touched, pulsing in time with his pulse. The translator chip at his ear chimed, confused by the flood of nonverbal data. Tess whispered, bond imprint successful. Then her knees buckled. Draven caught her massive weight against his torso, staggering backward until his spine met the metal wall. For a second, he thought she'd passed out, then her breath returned, shallow but rhythmic. The neon trace lines along her arms dimmed to a slow throb crisis, partially averted. Relief slammed into him, followed by the warm, disorienting realization that she smelled like thunderstorms over lilac fields. Intimacy was supposed to be a choice, a dance, not a battlefield triage maneuver. Yet here they were. Bodies entangled because biology wrote its own orders. A muffled explosion rolled across the compound, distant but unmistakable. Raven's cum unit flared red pirate incursion 3 blocks east. Figures on the security. Hala darted between prefab shelters, stun rifles sparking blue doom. The refugees were sitting ducks. Defensive turrets had been taken offline for midnight maintenance. Again, worst timing imaginable. Tess stirred, senses pinging threats before the screen finished rendering. Her eyes cleared just enough to focus. Danger, I fight. She pushed away, scanning for her dropped blade. Draven cursed under his breath. They needed to address her condition. Yet a firefight loomed and she was still half hijacked by Rakera. He activated his cum. Command crackled. Peacekeeper Holt. Pirates intercepted perimeter. Evacuate non-combatants. Hold line at grid 4. He glanced at Tess, already retrieving her weapon, the luminous runes along its edge reacting to her grip like flame to oxygen. She looked prepared to carve a path through anything that moved. You're compromised, he told her. When Miss Sentin, you'll collapse. Better on my feet beside you than waiting for death alone, she answered. The declaration landed heavy with layers of meaning, warrior creed, personal loyalty, and something hotter, more elemental. Sirens wailed outside. Draven keyed the manual override on his locker, revealing twin kinetic pistols, lightweight armor plates, and a med injector loaded with adrenaline nanode mix. He tossed the extra breastplate toward Tess. It was laughably small for her, but she slid it under her shoulder guard anyway, improvising. A shiver ran down her spine. Discipline regained a foothold. I feel balanced, she said, voice stronger though still tinged with hunger. That hunger flared in her pupils again when she looked at him, but the urgency receded beneath determination. Draven recognized the shift. This was the soldier he knew. Channeling everything, even desire, into focus. Together, they burst into the corridor. Emergency strobes washed the metal walls crimson white, matching the war paint pattern on Tess's skin. Civilians, human and alien, raced for interior bunkers. Draven barked tactical orders, herding stragglers. Tess stayed glued to his flank, blade weaving a protective arc that discouraged any would-be attacker from rounding corners. They reached the central courtyard where pirate raiders poured through a breached perimeter gate. Smoke coiled above slag turrets, and the pirates' exosuits glimmered with stolen Zalari tech plates. Thundercractus had leaped straight into an advancing trio, blades singing as if delighted. Sparks rained. 2 raiders fell in pieces before they registered the threat. The third fired a concussive blast that hit Tess square, lifting her off her feet. Draven sprinted, kinetic pistol barking 3 tight shots. The pirate's exovisor shattered, body slumping. Tess rolled, sprang up with feline grace, but he saw the way her knees wobbled. The energy bolt hadn't done all the damage Reek. There still gnawed at her nervous system, draining strength faster than adrenaline could replenish. Draven pulled her behind scorched cover. 3 minutes and you're on fumes, he warned. She bared teeth in a wry snarl. Then we end this in 2. She tossed him a canister from her belt. Salari flash singularity. He primed it. While she provided suppressive blade work, carving arcs that corralled pirates into the kill zone, at the last second, he lobbed the sphere high. Its implosion detonated mid-air, sucking oxygen and light in a micro-vortex. Pirates screamed, visors cracking, optics fried. Thess launched herself through the dissipating sphere, a living storm. Draven followed, laying precision fire where her swings didn't reach. 10 seconds later, silence fell except for cinders and distant alarms. The courtyard belonged to them. Thess staggered, breath hitching. Her eyes glazed as the after-battle surge faded. Biology surged back in. Draven holstered his pistol, closed the distance, and braced a hand at the back of her neck, an intimate Zalari gesture he'd learned under cannon fire. "Stay with me," he murmured.
As
She leaned in until her forehead rested against his, the height difference bridged by exhaustion and trust. Heat pulsed through their shared touch, a private language louder than sirens. Somewhere beyond the smoke, backup units moved in, med drones worry toward them. Draven didn't break contact. "Medical can stabilize you," he said quietly, and then her voice trembled. He swallowed. "Then we decide, together, how to handle this." A pause, thick with cannon fire memories and an unspoken promise. "Together," she repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. Medics arrived, but Thess kept her fingertips tangled with his until anesthesia kicked in. Draven watched her eyelids flutter, a warrior conceding temporary surrender. He realized with sober clarity that the bond imprint was already rewriting the trajectory of both their lives. Treaties might condemn, gossip might roar, and pirates would surely return, but in that moment, one truth eclipsed the rest. Humanity had saved the galaxy by pushing back darkness with unbreakable hearts. And now, maybe it was a single human's heart that could save a Zalari warrior from her own biology. As med drones lifted Thess onto a grav sled, her grip loosened, but her gaze locked onto his. No words passed, none were needed. Draven squared his shoulders, preparing the debrief that would ignite scandal across two worlds. Yet beneath the layers of protocol waiting to crush them, felt something fierce take root, something worth defying galaxies for. They kept Thess sedated for 24 hours. It was supposed to be protocol. Necessary, Madrones carefully monitored her vitals, ensuring she didn't slip into Phase 2 neural collapse. But Draven knew better. They weren't just stabilizing her, they were quarantining her. Even after what they'd done together, defended the courtyard, pushed back the pirate assault, saved over a dozen civilians, the higher-ups viewed Thess not as a hero, but as a liability in heat. Reek Thera scared people, especially now that it had targeted a human, and worse, that human hadn't run. Draven sat beside her medical pod, back straight, armor stripped to the waist, jaw locked. His left arm was still bandaged where shrapnel had sliced through muscle, courtesy of a frag grenade meant for Thez, but he refused the painkillers. He needed to stay alert. The medbay's lights dimmed to their artificial evening setting. The scent of disinfectant, a poor mask for blood and sweat. Thess lay inside the translucent stasis shell, her massive form barely contained by the pod designed for standard humanoid size. Tubes threaded through the base, pumping stabilizers, electrolyte fluids, and controlled doses of neural inhibitors into her bloodstream. Her silver eyes fluttered beneath closed lids. She was waking up. Draven stood quickly, resting one palm on the stasis shell. "Hey, you're safe." Her breathing deepened, and a faint tremor passed through her. He pressed the manual unlock code. Alarms would trigger in central control, but he didn't care. The Scala had trusted him in the worst possible moment of her life. He wasn't about to let her wake up alone in a tube. The lid hissed open. "Draven?" Her voice was weak, but her tone, it was her again. Not the feral haze of mating heat, but the same focused, blunt-edged warrior he'd known since the Drax campaigns. She blinked hard, taking in the surroundings, her mind catching up with her body. "Where am I, Medical Bay?" "District 7 Infirmary." "Pirates are gone." She pushed herself up, muscles quivering from stasis exhaustion. "Did I hurt anyone?" "No." He hesitated. "We fought together. You were in control." "Completely?" Thess frowned, her gaze falling to her fingers, then to the scars on her knuckles. "Almost." You didn't hurt me either, he said gently. And if you're asking whether you forced anything, I don't feel violated. She looked up sharply, wounded pride flickering in her eyes. That's not what I know, he cut in, voice quiet. I just want you to hear it. I stayed because I wanted to. Her lips parted slightly, but no answer came. Just silence. Kind that weighed more than a room full of admirals. Then the sirens blared. It wasn't an attack knot this time. This was administrative, legal, judicial. Someone had filed a violation protocol 7 complaint, cross-species. Physical bonding during a biologically induced mating cycle. Without full council authorization, Draven's name had been tagged on the alert. 2. His stomach twisted. Of course they would come for them. It's not because of what they'd done, but because he was human and she was Zalari. Threatened the delicate balance Earth had with the intergalactic accords. He turned to Ward. Vess. They'll try to separate us, interrogate, twist this into something. Ugly, her jaw clenched. Let them try. Then her feet hit the floor. She stumbled at first. He caught her hand. Her skin flared briefly with electric veins. The Rekthera had passed its peak, but the after effects lingered. Her body was still in flux. The need to fight to protect was ingrained. She stood taller, focused, unafraid. They'll come for me, she said. I'm ready. But I won't let them chain me. They might come for me too, he muttered. She looked at him with something unreadable in her expression. Then, softer, I won't let them take you either. Suddenly the door snapped open with military precision. A pair of Alliance Command enforcers in dark blue armor stepped inside. Visors opaque. Behind them walked a third figure advisor, Volek, the Zalari ambassador to Earth, thin and cold-eyed with ceremonial ridges etched into his skin. His gaze swept Thess and narrowed when he saw her standing unsupported. The Scala, daughter of Ray, Volek said. You've broken sacred protocol. You entered mating season among non-bonded species, endangered a treaty participant, and she saved lives, Draven interrupted. We both did. Volek didn't even look at him. You will be transported. To orbit for evaluation, genetic interference, psychological instability, possible contamination. He made a gesture, and the enforcers stepped forward with restraint bands. Thess tensed. Draven put a hand on her arm. We fight together, he whispered. She glanced at the guards, then at him. Always? Then she moved, like lightning. Her hand lashed out, grabbed one guard's wrist, and spun him into his partner with such force that both helmets cracked against each other. Volek yelped and stumbled back as Thess snapped the cuffs off her own wrists and threw them across the room. Draven was already moving, dragging the ambassador into a medical alcove, locking the containment field behind him. We're not criminals, he said, but we'll fight like them if you force us to. The room was in chaos. Red lights flickered. Alarm klaxons screamed. Thess had both enforcers disarmed, but backup would be coming in minutes. We need a ship, she said. I know. Someone. They ran through medical corridors into back alleys of the refugee compound. Civilians shouted in surprise as they passed, some recording on holotabs. Draven tapped into an old secure comm channel from his military days. Ressa, I need an unmarked transport. Immediately. Ressa's voice, older and sharper than he remembered, snapped back through the earpiece. You bring in a bounty or a war criminal? A friend. Thought so. I'll meet you in Bay 9. They arrived. Just as shutters started to lock down the district, a dark civilian freighter waited with engines warming. Small figure standing at the base ramp, Captain Ressa Dorn, former smuggler, war hero turned shadow runner. And the only person crazy enough to help them? You owe me drinks, she said. To Draven, then she eyed this. And you owe me answers. You're lucky I hate the council more than I like being safe. They didn't argue, just climbed aboard. Within seconds, the ship was screaming into the clouds, rising past the Earth defense satellites, punching into deep orbit. They jumped to a small station on the edge of neutral space outpost, Karos barely functional. Filled with exiles and mercenaries, far from the Alliance's reach, it was a haven, temporary, Fragile, but it gave them time. Thess collapsed into a bunk, the second they were alone. Draven sat beside her, gently brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. "You disobeyed a direct order from your own ambassador. He's a politician," she murmured. "You're a warrior. I'm not a soldier anymore. You fought. Like one for me." Silence again. But it was warmer now. Softer. Then she said, "Zalari mating bonds weren't meant to cross species. But I've read the medical scans, the imprint. It held. I thought humans weren't compatible. So, did we?" He took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "What does that mean?" She smiled, tired, fierce, beautiful. "It means your scent is in my blood. Your pulse lives in my second heart. We are bonded now." Draven's chest tightened. "And if the council finds us, they'll try to tear it apart." He leaned closer. "Then we give them hell." Outside, stars stretched across the void like endless paths they could take. But no matter where they went, what chased them, or what laws tried to separate them, they had already chosen each other, and no treaty in the galaxy could undo that. 2 weeks into exile, and the stars still looked the same. The Scala stood alone on the upper deck of Outpost Karos, watching a dying red sun sink behind the curve of a gas giant. The metal floor vibrated beneath her bare feet, a constant hum of unstable life support systems barely stitched together by old scrap and rogue mechanics. Refugees, criminals, deserters, and wanderers filled the station's underbelly. But up here, it was just her, the cosmos, and the weight of what she'd done, what they had done. Draven's scent still lingered on her skin. She wore his, shirt too small, the collar stretched over her shoulder. And beneath that fabric, her bonding lines still glowed faintly when he neared. Her instincts were quieter now. The Rekthara had passed. But the bond, that was real, permanent. Zalari. Law called it sacred. The Alliance called it dangerous. She closed her eyes. A door creaked behind her. "I thought I might find you here," Draven said, stepping onto the observation deck. He held 2 cups of heated stim brew. Ressa found real beans, somehow, probably. Robbed a diplomat. Figured you needed some. Thess took the cup without speaking, her fingers brushing his. A charge passed between them, small, electric, but unmistakable. "You've been quiet since we landed," he added. She sipped the brew. It was bitter, hot, grounding. "I've been thinking. Zalari customs were never meant for this. I bonded outside the clan, outside the species. That's unheard of. And yet, you're still here, with me." Her voice was lower now. "I chose you. The imprint may have started in heat, but the bond stayed because I let it. Because I wanted it." Draven stepped beside her, shoulder to shoulder, watching the storm clouds ripple across the gas giant. "Then what's bothering you?" "I can feel you," she whispered. "Even when you're across the station. When you're angry, you're afraid. When you're dreaming of war." Her gaze drifted toward the stars. "And last night I felt something else. A sharpness, a memory that wasn't mine." Draven froze. Thess turned to him. "You were dreaming of Elteri Prime, the cave ambush. The fire." "I haven't told anyone about that," he said softly. "You don't need to. I felt it." Their bond had begun during biological madness, but it had evolved into something deeper. Psychic, emotional, one mind echoing in the other. Zalari called it Telenora, the soul bind. It usually took years to form. But with them, it had only taken days. Thess touched his chest over his heart. "I would carry your pain if I could." He covered her hand with his. "You already have." For a moment, there was only the hum of the outpost. Then, an alarm pierced the stillness. Emergency tones. Short, repeating. Unauthorized dock breach. Ressa's voice crackled over the intercom. Inbound ship bypassed security net. Everyone. 2 defensive positions. Draven and Thess didn't hesitate. They sprinted toward the lower bay. Weapons already in hand. The corridor was chaos civilians running, shields dropping, lights flickering. Thess moved like liquid fire, her long strides barely making sound. Draven was right behind her, pistol drawn, calculating angles, entry points. Then the hangar door exploded. Smoke and fire roared out, followed by Shadow's black armored figures. Fluid as shadows, their gear laced with off-world tech and non-regulation cloaking systems. Pirates. No. Bounty hunters, elite ones. And leading them a woman in a crimson coat stepped through the debris like a ghost through smoke. Tall, elegant, features hidden behind a half-mask that shimmered with reactive mesh. Her weapon was a gravity hammer, slung across her back, one hand resting casually on the hilt. Thess recognized her instantly. Soraka Vare. Draven blinked. You know her? She's Xylari, and a bond purifier. He turned to her sharply. What the hell is that? Hunts those who form illegal soulbinds outside the clan, especially those bonded to aliens. Thess's eyes narrowed.
How?
She's here for me. And probably me too, Draven muttered, heart pounding. Soraka's voice echoed across the bay, clear and cool. Discala, your bond violates ancient right and modern treaty. Your blood was pledged to the Rikaru line. You turned your back on it. For this thing. Her mask turned toward Draven. He raised his pistol. Hello to you too. Soraka didn't flinch.
I am
here to sever the bond. Willingly if you submit, fatally if you resist. Step forward, blade in hand, tattoos glowing. I resist, Soraka exhaled. Then you die. The bounty team surged forward. Thess met them first, her blade carving arcs of light, a deadly dance of precision and fury. Draven flanked left, covering her with suppressive fire, every shot landing with surgical intent. One of the attackers tried to flank him. He ducked low, flipped the enemy over his shoulder, and fired twice into their chest plate. Soraka, meanwhile, watched, studying. Then she moved. Faster than any Xylari Thess had ever seen. She was on them. In seconds, her gravity hammer swung in a lazy arc, then activated mid-swing, imploding the air and sending Thess flying across the hangar. She slammed into a wall with enough force to crater it. Draven charged Soraka. But she sidestepped, grabbed him by the throat, and lifted him like he weighed nothing. You're the reason she's tainted, she hissed. You broke her lineage. Well, you can go to hell. Then he headbutted her. The impact cracked her visor. She staggered, he dropped, rolled, fired up into her gut. The kinetic round dented her armor, but didn't stop her. Soraka howled and kicked him hard enough to send him tumbling. Thess roared. Back into the fray, her blood surged with old instincts. Ancient ones. Protect your mate. Fight until breath fails. Kill or fall. She clashed with Soraka in a storm of flashing weapons and crushed metal. Sparks burst from every blow. Draven rose again, covering her flank. Together, they forced Soraka to fall back, but it wasn't enough. Soraka activated a failsafe on her belt. The hunters withdrew instantly, retreating as a detonation charge lit. Up behind them, fall back. Shh, shouted, grabbing Draven. They sprinted down the corridor just as the entire hangar exploded behind them, sending heat and shrapnel screaming through the outpost. Back in the command center, Ressa slammed her. Fist on the control panel. You brought a damn bond purifier here. We didn't invite her, Draven growled, wiping blood from his temple. She's hunting Thess. Ressa stared at Thess, her anger fading into something softer. So it's real? It is, Thess said. You know what that means, right? Ressa asked. The Xylari clan will put a bounty so high, even I might consider turning you in. Thess's gaze didn't waver. Let them come. Draven reached for her hand. Ressa sighed. Then we better prep for war, where Soraka doesn't give up. She'll come back. And next time, she'll bring enough firepower to flatten this station. Draven looked at Thess. We need to run. Thess shook her head. No, we fight, but on our terms. She turned to Ressa. We need passage to Ricaro Prime, to my clan. Draven blinked. You want to go back there? They need to see me. Us. If we can't hide from them, we confront them. I'll stand before the elders and claim my right to bond who I choose. Ressa looked between them, jaw tight. That's suicide. Tess nodded. Maybe. Draven squeezed her hand. Ressa exhaled, then smiled bitterly. Gods, I hate you both.
Activated the nav console.
We leave at dawn. As the outpost settled into night again, Tess and Draven stood beneath the flickering starlight. Wounded, wanted, but together. He looked at her, voice low. Do you regret it? Regret bonding with a reckless, sarcastic human who bleeds? Too easily and never shuts up. She leaned down, forehead to his. Not for a second. Their lips met not, with the desperation of Resemblance, but the choice of something real, something earned, and in the silence that followed they both knew the war was coming. The clans would demand blood. The galaxy would not accept them easily. But love wasn't made for easy paths. It was made for moments like this when everything says run. Two souls choose to stand, to discover if Tess and Draven can survive. The homeworld's trial, battle an elite bond purifier, and defend their love from a galaxy built on separation. Continue to Section 4 where tradition and rebellion finally collide. The journey to Rikaru Prime took 4 days through wild space and one stolen warp corridor. Captain Ressa's ship, a Rust Widow, wasn't built for stealth, but she flew like she had a vendetta. Tess and Draven spent most of the trip inside the forward chamber training, planning speaking through both words and silences. The soul bond was stronger now. This no longer flinched when she felt his fear. Draven no longer questioned when her thoughts filled the quiet moments of his mind. The connection was no longer just survival, it was choice. Layered in trust and forged in war. They arrived in orbit around Rikaru under cloak, hiding their identity signatures as long as they could. But the planet once Thessa's home, now her battlefield was not blind. The moment they breached the upper atmosphere, the clan felt her return. The sky above the citadel shimmered with shield barriers. Defensive towers rotated, targeting protocols. Scanning the sky. A fleet of Zalari airguards launched instantly. They landed hard on a rocky plain near the border of the clan's sacred temple. The air shimmered with ancestral energy. Spires reached for the heavens like jagged claws etched with centuries of law, duty, and blood, and waiting for them at the edge of the clearing Soraka Vare. Again, this time flanked by 10 armored Zalari. Enforcers, each wearing the crimson insignia of the Bond Tribunal. You were warned, Soraka said calmly, but you came anyway. You bring your shame into the heart of our world. Draven stepped forward. This bond wasn't forced. It wasn't accidental. She chose me. I chose her. Soraka's gaze remained cold. The tribunal will decide. Your fate, both of you. The trial begins now. They were brought to the Hall of Ancestral Fire, a massive chamber surrounded by fire vaults where Zalari history was stored in flame-coat, a living record of the clan's unbroken line. Elders in ceremonial robes formed a circle, with Soraka standing to the side as both accuser and enforcer. Draven was allowed no weapon. Tess wore only her skin and the binding mark on her collarbone that still pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Elder rose. The Scala of the Ray you return bonded to an outsider. Explain. Tess lifted her chin. I bonded during Resemblance, but I accepted the imprint. I strengthened it. And I claim the right of Heartfire trial by soul and blade. Gasps rippled through the council. Even Soraka's jaw tightened. Draven whispered, What's Heartfire? It's ancient, Tess replied. And forbidden. A ritual for proving love, loyalty, and unity across the bloodlines. It hasn't been invoked in 500 cycles. Why? Because almost everyone who dares it dies. The council conferred. Then the eldest spoke. So be it. At Mooncrest, the Heartfire will burn. If you survive, the bond is recognized. If you fall, so does your claim. Soraka bowed slightly, already confident in the outcome. Draven didn't sleep that night. Neither did Tess. They held each other under the stars, whispering stories from two separate worlds, moments from childhood. songs from forgotten wars, pieces of themselves that would vanish if tomorrow ended in fire. The next day, the trial began. They stood in a circular arena surrounded by ancient Xylari warriors. Flames ringed the edge blue, living fire drawn from the soul vaults of the temple. They were each handed weapons carved from pure obsidian crystal, not for combat but for truth. A psychic field shimmered into place, activating the heart fire. The rules were simple. Open your minds. Let the bond become a conduit. Face each other's pain, past fears, and regrets, and survive it together. Thess took Draven's hand. The fire roared. The world vanished. Suddenly, Draven was her. He felt her first kill at age 9 holding a blade longer than her arm, sinking it into the chest of a pirate who had murdered her sister. He felt the guilt she buried, the rage she wore like armor. He saw her clawing for rank in a world that praised obedience over emotion. Then he was standing on Vrak's ridge again, screaming for backup as his squad burned around him. He felt his hand trembling while holding a gun to the skull of a wounded enemy. He tasted the blood, the ash, the endless nights where he wondered why he survived. Thess gritted her teeth. She felt it all, not just the trauma, but the loneliness, the heartbreak, the loss of a brother who died in a shuttle crash Draven couldn't prevent. They staggered, but did not fall. The fire grew brighter, then the test turned cruel. Voice echoed inside the bond. Let him feel what you fear most. Suddenly, Draven stood in a burning temple, watching Thess die in his arms. Again, he screamed her name. No, Thess roared, shattering the illusion. I reject this pain. And in that moment, their bond pulsed out with biology. Not with fire, but with love. The flames turned gold. The council gasped. Soraka stepped forward, rage flickering. This is a trick. The eldest elder raised his hand. It is not. The bond is real, stronger than any seen in this generation. Their pain does not divide, it unites. Draven and Thess fell to one knee, exhausted but victorious. You are free to love whom you choose, the elder said solemnly, even beyond the stars. But just as the council began to lower their heads in blessing a plasma, bolt rang out. It struck the high elder square in the chest. Chaos erupted. Draven tackled Thess as explosions rippled through the temple. Enforcers screamed. Fire vaults shattered. From the shadows, a second squad of rogue Xylari appeared, faces marked with the purest flame. The same faction that opposed all alien bonds. At their head, Soraka again. Bloodied, but alive. Her visor cracked, one eye glowing with madness. Enough, she snarled. This mockery ends now. The bloodlines will be pure, or they will be ashes. She raised her hand. A warship uncloaked in orbit, a planetary strike. Charged in the clouds, Draven shouted, grabbing Thess's hand. They had seconds, maybe less. She looked at him, tears in her silver eyes. If this is the end, it's not. And he pulled her close, kissed her, and activated the stolen translocator beacon hidden in his boot. A gift from Ressa. One jump. One chance. The sky erupted in flame. They vanished. Somewhere in deep space, aboard a derelict vessel lit by only emergency lights. Draven and Thess reappeared in a flash of blue light, collapsing to the floor. Coughing, bruised, and barely alive. But alive, Draven groaned, holding her. Okay, so now the galaxy really wants us dead. Thess laughed through a sob. Let them come. They looked out the shattered viewport stars burning like promises. Waiting to be kept. No home, no army, no plan. But they had each other. And the fire between them. It burned hotter than war. Silence surrounded them in the cold shell of the derelict ship just days ago. They'd stood in front of the highest council of Thess people. Love burning as bright as fire. Now drifting in deep space with bruises still fresh and no allies. In sight, Thess and Draven were fugitives hunted not just by zealots, but by an entire belief system older than most civilizations. Draven knelt beside the ship's central panel, rewiring its nav core with scavenged tools and stripped fiber. Sparks hissed with every movement. Life supports running on bones. No weapons. One functioning thruster. Thess stood by the cracked viewport, arms crossed, still in blood-stained temple silks. And fuel. He glanced up at her. Fuel. That's a strong word. We've got hope and half a miracle. Her smile was faint. That might be enough. Joined her at the window. The stars stretched on forever. Somewhere behind them, Soraka Vare was marshaling her new Crusadan army of purists with weapons, conviction, and the full backing of the Xylari separatists. She'd declared Thess a traitor, declared Draven a contaminant, declared their bond a heresy. But Soraka had made one mistake. She didn't kill them. They found Resadorn 2 systems over. Deep in the outlaw zone of Epsilon Rho 9, the Rust Widow was docked inside a hollowed-out asteroid, posing as a shipping barge. The moment the airlock hissed open and Thess stumbled inside, Ressa nearly shot her in the face. Instead, she hauled both of them into the medbay, slapped Raven with a stim patch and muttered, "You lunatics better have a damn plan." Raven sat up, groggy, but alive. "We're going to war," Ressa snorted. That's not a plan. That's suicide in uniform." Thess stepped forward. "Not if we're not alone." They spent the next 6 days assembling a list, not of soldiers, but of bonded pairs, illegal couples, scattered across the galaxy, hiding in slums on asteroid colonies deep beneath ocean cities, human and Xylari, Xylari and Cytheri. Even those bonded to species considered enemies by the Alliance. All of them in love. All of them hunted, Thess and Draven called them. One by one, some laughed, some cursed. Some wept, just hearing their names spoken out loud without fear. And some answered by the second week. They had 9 ships. By the 3rd-30-7. By the 4th, for 200. The bonded rebellion was born. They called themselves the Fractured Flame, a movement not of governments, but of hearts. And at its center stood the Scala of the Ray, and Draven Holt of Earth. The final confrontation came over the shattered moon of Felser IV, where Soraka had established a new, purest fortress. Her fleet hovered like vipers, ready to crush anyone who challenged her. The fractured flame arrived in waves, JUNKURs, traitors ex-military freighters, civilian haulers retrofitted with plasma torpedoes, fighters flown by lovers with nothing left. To lose, Draven stood on the bridge of the flagship, Union Fire, his old armor reforged with Xylari tribal marks etched over human alloy. Beside him, Thess wore a ceremonial battle plate gilded with her clan's sigil, but she no longer belonged to them. She belonged only to herself, and to him. Soraka hailed them. Her face appeared on the holoscreen, calm and elegant, a silver scar now slashing down one cheek. "This will be your grave." Draven stepped forward. "No, this will be your reckoning." The screen blinked off. The war began. Explosions flared like dying suns. Ships danced through fire. Lovers fought side by side, some never trained, but all united, bonded. Thess led the charge, her blade cutting open enemy cruisers from within. Draven followed her through the breach, planting charges, disabling cannons. Dragging wounded rebels back through flame and smoke, they moved as one, thought as one, fought as one. And finally, aboard Soraka's flagship, they faced her. She stood at the top of a throne chamber lined with burning braziers, her crimson coat fluttering, her hammer pulsing with gravity energy. "You would throw away your future," she hissed. "For this." Draven stepped forward. "I didn't throw it away. I chose it. Theskala's not my weakness. She's my reason to keep fighting." Soraka raised her weapon. Then fight Thess struck first. The duel shattered the chamber. Steel met gravity, flame met ice. They tore through walls and shields, each strike echoing through the ships. Hull, Soraka was fast. Thess was faster. Because Soraka fought for purity. But Thess fought for love. Draven backed her up, covering her blind spots, timing her movements. They moved like orbiting moons, stoppable and intertwined. Soraka lunged one final time, and Thess drove her blade through her old mentor's chest. "I am not broken," she whispered. "I am whole." Soraka collapsed, and with her fall, war ended. The galaxy changed slowly. The Alliance held emergency tribunals. Zalari stepped down or faded into silence. Others spoke up, those with hidden bonds. Children born in secret, world by world. Laws began to shift. The term interspecies contamination was quietly erased from legal texts. The first official cross-bond recognition ceremony was held on Earth Draven, and Thess didn't attend, because they were somewhere else at peace. A small cabin by the twin lakes of Talura V, surrounded by singing trees. No alarms, no war. Just sunrise, water, and the soft hum of a world finally willing to let them be together. Draven sat on the steps, polishing a piece of ancient Zalari steel. Behind him, a pair of strong arms wrapped around his waist. "I felt you thinking too." "Hard again," Thess said, chin on his shoulder. He chuckled. Old habit. She sat beside him, her face warm with morning light. "So," she said softly, "do you regret it?" He took her hand, lifted it to his lips. Not 1 second. Her eyes gleamed. "Okay, then maybe we're ready." "For what?" "To stop running," she said, "and to start living." Draven leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't urgent. It was soft, real, eternal, and the stars above seemed to burn just for them. The end. Thank you for reading this HFY sci-fi romance adventure. If you loved this tale of love, battle, and rebellion across galaxies,